be the science of intentional prayer. And that's something that most of us didn't start out as spiritualists, and we came from other religious traditions. And so we have different backgrounds in the area of prayer. And so as spiritualists, just who and what are we praying to when we pray? So I want to think about that. Christians, they pray to a God they call Yahweh or Jehovah, and the Muslims, they pray to Allah. But as spiritualists, we don't pray to a certain being or a personality. Instead, we pray to infinite intelligence or universal consciousness. So just what is that? And this may take some getting used to. People who grew up in older church traditions might well ask, just who and what is the spiritual power that we're addressing there? And the source that we're praying to is, in psychological terms, our own higher power, our higher consciousness. And it's been so easy for people to take that higher consciousness and try to personalize it, try to make a personality out of it. And that's why they want to have Yahweh or Allah or something else that's the personality. But in effect, we're praying to ourself. It is more than our ego personality. It's not our ego. It's what the Alcoholics Anonymous calls the higher power, a consciousness that's larger than our ego selves. But still, it's a part of us. It is the consciousness that is the basis of all reality that makes up our universe. Now, I belong to a group of scientists called the Academy for the Advancement of Post-Materialist Science. And they see consciousness as the primary building block of matter. It's the basic thing that the quarks and the gluons are made out of, this consciousness, information. It's the underlying matrix of all reality. And they see consciousness as being eternal. Consciousness was here before the Big Bang. And we, in our individual consciousness, are each a part of that larger universal consciousness. So when we go to prayer and when we're praying, we're talking to what you could call in psychological terms our super consciousness. It's out there beyond our individual consciousness, which we sort of feel like is in our head. So I could say that this group of scientists are all scientific spiritualists, although they might not personally subscribe to that description, even though they all believe in after-death communications, which is what we do as spiritualists. We talk to the souls that are still living in the afterlife. But the answer here is that we're praying to the eternal consciousness that created the universe, the force that caused the Big Bang in the first place, our own consciousness. It's a piece of us. Each of us is a part of it. Each of our individual consciousnesses is a part of that bigger consciousness. And the example that I find easiest to comprehend is if we're each a grain of sand on a beach. Each of us is a little grain of sand on a beach. The beach is huge, and each of our consciousnesses is a grain of sand, but the whole beach is a huge consciousness. That's the easiest way to see it. We each contribute to the whole, and yet we're a part of the whole, because without each grain of sand, there wouldn't be a beach. So we're each one of those little grains of sand. So how then should we pray when we're praying? Do we ring up the big consciousness by saying, hey, you out there? No, not exactly. Scientific studies have proven that healing prayer can have efficacy even when the patients don't know they're being prayed for. Think about that for a second. Healing prayer. So you've got a bunch of healers who've done this at Davis Hospital, and they've done it at a lot of places. They've done these kind of studies. And the people being prayed for don't know they're being prayed for. The healers are doing the praying. And there will be changes in their healing that are scientifically significant, 54 to 60%, let's say. And it doesn't matter what religion or words are used. It could be any religion, any type of prayer. It will still have an effect on the patient if they're the recipient of the intent of those healing prayers. Then the patients who are being prayed for get better than the control group who aren't being prayed for. And this is scientifically proven fact. So it doesn't take the belief of the recipient. It's the belief of the person doing the praying, the one sending the intent. So scientifically, it is the healing intent that causes the healing. It is our heartfelt intention which does the work, irregardless of who or what we pray to. And we can pray to any kind of thing we want to create. We, like in spiritualism, say infinite intelligence or universal consciousness, but you could be praying to any named deity you want. It's the intent, it's the thought, it's the sharing, it's the intent coming out of the prayer that causes the healing to take place. And they always use healing in these things because it's something they can measure. Consequently, it is your intent that causes the result when you pray. It's your intent. What do you intend? What do you want? What are you creating? Personally, I've found that it is important to state the intent verbally, not just hold it in silently, but to actually articulate it in verbal sentences. And this helps me to personally believe in it. So when you're praying, you pray to infinite intelligence, but say it out loud, use words. That way you'll believe it. And this is an important part. Of course, this then becomes like as if you're talking to another person, another being, which is why all the religions, traditions have created a personality out of the universal consciousness. They see God with a beard, sitting on a cloud somewhere. We have these examples. They personalize it. They make God in their own image because they're talking to somebody. They feel like they're talking to somebody. Well, the somebody they're talking to is your higher consciousness. It's yourself. And that's who you're talking to. But it's good to do it with words. You just don't have to have a name for that personality. So what counts here is stating your intent in the form of a verbal prayer and giving it to the universe, which communicates with your higher consciousness. Now, the ancient Hawaiian kahunas had a way of seeing this, and they described this verbalization as establishing an invisible linkage to the higher power, okay? Which then allows the energy to flow along that linkage like an electric wire. They realize that your subconscious will do whatever you tell it, but you have to tell it, which is where the verbalization comes in. They have a name for it. I forgot. It's Onopino something. It's your subconscious that communicates with your higher conscious. And so you have to talk to the subconscious to get the higher consciousness involved. And that's how the kahunas see it. But you have to tell it to your subconscious. Then once you verbalize the intent, the subconscious begins to see it as a fact, and then sets about causing the superconscious, your higher power, to bring it into fruition. And not surprisingly, all of our current science bears this out. This actually works this way. This is how we co-create the universe. Your stated intent, when constantly reinforced, becomes reality. On the other hand, some people will say, but I've been praying about that for years and still nothing has happened. Unfortunately, their problem is in the statement itself. nothing has happened. So long as they believe that nothing is happening, it won't happen. And there's the problems they're faced with. So the stated intent, when you state an intent and you state it verbally, it requires belief. And this is where the rubber really hits the road. We can't just want to believe. We must actually believe it. So how does that work? When a healer says a prayer for healing that's directed to a patient that does not even know they're being prayed for, yet they're healed. As our science has proven this repeatedly, it's because the healer believed, the one doing the prayer believed, and not because the patient believed. The belief has to be held by the one sending the energy of the intent into the system. The one creating the energy has to believe. Of course, if the patient also believes, well, then the healing is even more certain. So what's going on there? What's really happening? As the Hawaiian kahunas see it, in the belief, we're convincing our subconscious that our intent is true before it becomes into reality. We're seeing it as real in the future before it manifests in the present. Prayer is really that simple. It's believing that it works, which is the tough part. So to summarize this then, we're praying to ourselves, our higher power. We deliver the message to our higher, to deliver the message to our higher power, we need our own subconscious to believe in the verbally stated intent. And our personal higher power, as part of the universal consciousness, source, then co-creates the stated intent. And that's how we co-create our reality. Now, that may all sound too simple, too easy, too pat. Just remember, it's been proven scientifically to be true. It actually works. So no matter how simple it sounds, it really works. And it has to do with your belief level. How much do you believe? Again, that's the difficult part, the believing. So if you think back over your life, you think back to the things that you've seen happen, and you've seen prayer that's been answered at different times in your life, and you all have examples of this. You bring them up in your gratitudes, and you say, oh, this happened. You'll see that all of this is in operation, this believing, this verbalizing. But the most important item is always that you believed in your own stated intent. One good way to observe this, of course, is to count your daily blessings that come to you from Source. For example, you got up this morning, you probably didn't even think about it. You just believed there would be enough oxygen for you to breathe. You didn't worry about it. You never thought about it. You just got up and took a deep breath and believed there would be enough oxygen to breathe. Where does that oxygen come from? It comes from the plants and the trees converting carbon dioxide into oxygen for you through the process of photosynthesis. And we don't even think about it. We say, oh, well, there's too much carbon dioxide. There aren't enough trees, but there's too much carbon dioxide. What are we really saying there? The trees need carbon dioxide. They need that greenhouse gas, that terrible thing, carbon dioxide. They need that in order to do photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is what makes the sugar that causes all of life to exist on this planet. Without carbon dioxide, that terrible greenhouse gas that everybody's trying to get rid of, without it, the trees wouldn't live. The grass wouldn't live. No green things out there would live at all. They need the carbon dioxide in order to do photosynthesis. And when they do the photosynthesis, they make oxygen, which then you breathe. You didn't even think about it. You just knew about it. You believed the oxygen was going to be there. You see, that's what belief is. It creates the universe. So you think about your blessings. You were blessed with that oxygen this morning. And that believing is how we co-create reality. The trees breathe the carbon dioxide and they make the oxygen, and it's just there for us. Another blessing is that the sun reappeared this morning. Where would we be if that stopped happening? The sun is what they use to do the photosynthesis that causes the carbon dioxide to convert to oxygen so you could breathe it. And all of that's taking place without you doing anything except believing it's going to happen. You just know it's going to happen. You don't just believe, you know it's going to happen. If I ask you to raise your hand, how many believe the sun's going to come up tomorrow morning? Everybody'd raise their hand. Well, some might not, but most would. That's a blessing we just know. We more than believe it. We know it. And when your belief reaches a level of knowing is when things happen. That's what you have to do. So it's really that simple. You just have to get over the hump of knowing instead of wishing. And that's what makes something happen in this world. And that's what we're praying to. We're praying to the conscious universe, the infinite intelligence that is our higher power that we're connected to. We've been connected to that consciousness, that higher power, since before we came into this existence in this lifetime here. We are eternal. We've been here before and we'll be here again. And we are eternal. Our consciousness is eternal. And that's who we talk to when we have after-death communication, when we have what we call communicating with the departed. What we do as spiritualists, we're talking to those conscious souls. In the meditation, he talked about your guide, and your guide was probably one of your relatives that you were remembering. And that guide is a consciousness that's still alive in the afterlife that we can communicate with. Your consciousness, your higher consciousness, is bigger than the consciousness you feel in your physical life here. And that's what you're praying to. So you're trying to communicate your personal ego desires here with that higher consciousness to let it know what you want. And I love what the kahunas have. It's a great description of what goes on, because we tell our subconscious, and our subconscious then communicates with our higher conscious. That's how that all works. And they've got a good description of it. It's more spiritual than scientific, but it's very, very good description. And so that's why I wanted to bring that up. But that's what we're doing when we pray as spiritualists. We're praying to infinite intelligence. We're praying to, you could say, to information. We understand in the Academy for the advancement of post-materialist science, we understand that the universe is conscious, and that consciousness is the basis of all reality. It's the matrix of our existence. Everything that we think is here is really an illusion. You hear me talk all the time about we're sitting on the chair, but is a chair really there? It's just it's a field, and the field of my posterior won't sink through the chair. I talk about that a lot. The chair is a field, my posterior is a field, and the two just won't. They resist each other. But they're both illusions. They're just our framework, our way of seeing reality. Matter is information. That's the basis of reality. And we're communicating with that information when we pray. And we have the power to change that information. And that's what we're doing. We're convincing ourselves to believe in the change, and then the change comes about. That's what prayer is. Convincing yourself to believe in what it is that you're going to create in the future. And that's how you can change the future, by changing your beliefs. So I'm going to leave you there. That's it.